Hello, listeners, and welcome into a bit of a special episode for episode 106. As you probably heard in our last episode, we intended to do kind of a segment on the SMC show, and we had such a great time recording, and there were such great insights shared that it actually got to a point where it was really too big for a segment. I'm here with John Bonanni. So, John, what are your thoughts about how this is going to go over with our listeners?
Yeah, thanks, Scott. And listeners, as Scott mentioned, we fully intended this to be a segment on the last episode, but there was so much information that we covered, the depth of conversation and around the show, what we did beforehand. It just serves to stand alone. And what's really nice is if you're thinking about this show, this episode is truly intended to be the show special. So this will cover everything from logistics, the pre-show, at the show, and all the questions that you likely have about attending Scale Model Challenge, they can probably be answered in this conversation. And we have a couple new timers as well. So Jeff Feller joins us. That's going to discuss kind of his experience coming to the show. But bottom line is, we're really excited to bring this special episode to you. So really, just sit back. Grab your favorite, morning beverage or evening for that matter, and just listen in on the amazing time that we had. And I'll be certain to say that we hope to share with you next year because we want more people to attend. And the intent of this episode is really to show how easy it is to go, the experience you'll have, and just the lifetime of memories you'll take away from this amazing experience. Welcome, listeners, to a special segment on Scale Model Challenge. I'm delighted to be joined today from four other gentlemen that joined myself on the trip, and then also Scott Gentry, gold medal Scott Gentry. Wasn't there in person, but there in spirit, and we're happy to have him along with us. So let's go around the room and give a brief introduction of everyone. Scott, how are you today?
Good, a little bit early, but it's good to meet here. I'm excited to hear all the stories and what you guys did. Followed along on Facebook and saw the touring that John Bonanni. I'm pretty convinced, rather than being in scale modeling, he wants to be a tour director at some point in his life. So it's good to see him living his dreams. But yeah, no, excited to kind of hear what your experience was like in preparation for my attendance next year.
Outstanding. We're going to go across the pond where it's a little later. Jensen, how are you today?
Very well. It's nice to be recording when it's daylight outside. But yeah, I'm good. Good to go. Excited to talk about it all over again.
Absolutely fantastic. And then we're going to go to the DC Beltway area for our three other people. Jackson, how are you today, sir?
I'm good. I'm excited to record and, like Jensen said, talk about our trip. It was a blast, and I'm looking forward to recapping all of it.
Sweet. We'll go down the road. TJ, how are you?
A little bit better than I think I was Friday night when we recorded. I think I sound a little bit better, but yeah, doing pretty good.
Agree. I think all of us sound a little better from that whatever virus, bacteria, or whatever Jackson's carrying as the super host.
Patient zero.
Patient zero. Um, Yeah, we're blaming Jackson, but yet we saw 10,000 people over the span of 6 days. So we're just going to divert all of our blame to him. So with that, I'll finish off. Super excited. We have Jeff Feller with us, Amps Master, great guy, best guy. He's laughing because we love giving him shit, listeners. But no, super excited to have Jeff with us. This was his first time at SMC, a longtime friend, and I dare I say neighbor of a few of the folks that are recording with us right now. But Jeff, how are you today, sir?
I'm great. Thanks for having me. Super excited to be on the Triple P for the first time. So, and very excited to talk about our amazing trip coming back from SMC. And I can attest to the fact that I was crammed in a car for 4 days straight next to patient zero. So my money's on the fact that I got sick from no other than Jackson. So
That's fair. I think we all shared. I think, yeah, we shared a space not meant for five grown adults for an extended period of time. So I think the Apollo program had more room in their capsule than us. So, Before we jump into it too far, I'd love to get a brief introduction from you, Jeff. I think it's important for our listeners to have context because this was your first SMC. I think it's important to know like who you are, what type of modeling you're into, and just give a brief background about yourself.
Yeah, thanks, John. Yeah, so been modeling. I won't go into all the details. Like, so many. I started as a kid. Started, believe it or not, as an aircraft modeler. My father taught me how to build aircraft. I think my first model was a Monogram B-26 Marauder. Shortly after that, I discovered armor models, in particular the 132nd Monogram models that we all know and love from the Shep Payne pamphlets, and that really, I just fell in love with the notion of armor, and that was also where I discovered dioramas and really started building dioramas pretty early on and experimenting. They were horrible. They continue to be horrible for for most of my childhood, but I was learning, and that passion stayed with me. Yeah, but I grew up in an interesting fact about my background when it comes to modeling. I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, and I grew up, in the 70s and 80s. And I'll never forget when, one of my heroes in modeling, Verlinden, moved his operation from Belgium to St. Louis to form the Verlinden Letterman and Stock Company, which probably most of you listeners are familiar with from Bob Letterman and the folks like that who made all the super diorama books as well as the Verlinden stuff. So it was really cool to have that in my backyard. And I grew up with folks in that area like Letterman, and was in an IPMS club with some notable folks like Charlie Pritchett, Ron Folks, and others. But it was really cool to grow up in a community, a modeling community that was just really willing to share, and I learned so much from my days back then. Yeah, and then fast forward, I like many, stopped modeling for many years, and then picked it back up when I was a little older. And when I got back into it, I was really blown away by all of the techniques and the advancements in the hobby. I was old school, throw a wash on, dry brush it, call it a day kind of a guy. And when I got back in, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And really just spent a lot of time trying to understand the new techniques and push myself and challenge myself. And it was around that time that I also decided, and this was around 2013, decided that I really wanted to focus on dioramas and storytelling, with it still being focused on my armor building. Armor was at the center of everything I did, and most of my diorama subjects, especially early on, were driven by a particular armor subject, and then a diorama built around that. Over time, I've gotten more into the storytelling aspects of dioramas, and starting to shift from the armor being the focus to starting with the story, and then kind of applying the armor as it makes sense to be able to augment that story. Along with that, been really focused on figure painting and trying to up my skills in figure painting, learning from people like TJ and others in the community that are just amazing at it. It's still, in my opinion, one of the areas of the craft that is the most important to being able to tell an effective story. So as you mentioned, JB, I live in the same area as Jackson and TJ. Another fun little fact is we started an AMPS chapter a couple of years ago, and that's quite honestly one of the most exciting and fun things about the hobby for me, is being able to create a club that I want to be a part of, the kind of club that I always dreamt of being a part of, and being able to once a month get together and build tanks, drink beer, and just be around people that share that passion. That's been super exciting. So that's our Northern Virginia AMPS club that we created. So yeah, I think that's brings us up to speed on who I am.
No, that's a great background. And I think it's really important just for context, because when I think about SMC and the type of modeler it pulls in, obviously I think you fit that mark in terms of how you approach the hobby, what type of work you like, the subject matter, the storytelling, like all these things resonate with that show and your exposure to like the international community. So it's almost like a great form fit, like, all right, Jeff's coming, it's going to be great. So I think with that is, again, important context. And now we'll just roll into what our trip is. And for our listeners, I'll give some background to Scale Model Challenge. So as we know, Scale Model Challenge held yearly, typically in the last weekend, second to last weekend in October. It's held in Eindhoven. Actually, it's held in a small town outside of Eindhoven. But if you're flying in, you could go into Schiphol, take the train down, or fly directly into Eindhoven, which Jensen has done, and you can take a quick Uber over. But bottom line is, it's a pretty easy destination to get to, not terribly difficult. We flew into Amsterdam and then rented a car. So again, those interested, you can also rent a car and do some things, which we did. So our trip lasted a few days longer. It felt like a 2-week journey based on the amount of sights and things and everything we saw and did. But it actually was just like 2.5 days. But we saw 4 countries in a day, and it was a really fun trip. So for context, we flew in, talk about meeting up and just setting the trip off right. I remember met Jeff at the bar in Dulles. And then Tim and Rob also joined us as well. And then TJ came along. So it was cool that everybody's gathering in the airport prior to it. And we all came from different spots. I came from Denver, Tim, TJ, and Jeff, obviously from the Beltway area, and then Rob from Texas. And then we flew over and we took the red eye, of course, landed early Wednesday morning, and the rest of the team assembled. I remember Jensen showing up. And Jensen, where did I tell you to meet us? At Starbucks, but you decided to go outside.
I saw your message. I didn't read them. I saw the words, didn't take any of it in. I was tired after my exhausting 1-hour flight from Manchester. The terminal was quite warm, and you're like, yeah, meet everyone at Starbucks. I was like, oh yeah, there's Starbucks. Head straight for the exit and wait outside with the smokers. Yeah, and then you called me a name, said go back inside. Jackson met me. Then I met up with everyone.
Outstanding. And speaking of Jackson, tell us about your route to Amsterdam.
Yeah, so it was very similar to Jeff and TJ's. I flew out of Dulles. Unfortunately, I did not take United like the rest of everyone, so I ended up taking Aer Lingus. So I was in a completely different terminal, different gate. So I wasn't able to meet up with anyone at the bar. But I did meet up with Jeff outside of Dulles. He let me borrow a sleeping roll for the trip. And so we met up outside, and I got that from him. And then we parted ways. But yeah, prior to the airport, I took it a little bit differently than last year, where I decided to stay up for 2 days straight to finish projects, but I justified it by saying it was me adjusting for the time difference. Don't really recommend that, as many people noted in comments. I looked exhausted for pretty much the entirety of the trip. And despite my lack of smiles, I was having a very good time. It was just bit of catch up, and being awake for that long and then immediately rolling into doing everything possible in a single day is not an easy thing to do. But I would definitely do it again, because I didn't really have to adjust to the difference in time at all.
Exactly. When you don't have sleep, you just sleep whenever.
Exactly.
And you were sick on top of that, even though we didn't know that at the time.
Yeah, I'm gonna get a bunch of messages, I'm sure, from a bunch of people being like, "Oh, I'm sick now too," and like, But no, I think there was a virus going around school, and I had it, I want to say, a week and a half or 2 weeks before the trip. I pretty much just had a cough, and I thought it was on its way out. Evidently, it was not. So, apologies for all you guys and anyone else I gave a lovely virus.
To be fair, there were other people at the show I certainly saw under the weather, coughing, and then we certainly didn't see anybody in the airports throughout our international journey either. So, but with that, talking about the journey overseas, one of the things that we constantly get asked, and I think this is a unique question amongst all of us, is how do we transport our models? Because everyone gets scared, whether it's TSA or, hey, again, internationally. I just remember last year, I still have PTSD from the guy putting his meat hook into Jackson's box and pulling out Spud's Sherman with his bare hand, just like fingers all over the side hull. And it's like, oh, Jesus. So with that question in context, I'd love to go around the room and talk about how we packed our models for this, because it's a constant question. And I think each of us took a unique approach. And maybe I'll start with Jensen, since he was basically carrying a nuclear device with him.
Yeah, so my first time ever transporting models was taking them to the US, and after what happened in Irish,
that went really well. That went
really well. So I learned my lesson from that. I was like, I'm going to get one of those really hard Pelican cases with that pluck and pack foam. So yeah, it was like 80 quid, and it was like exactly the dimensions for like cabin bag. So I was like, okay, it doesn't need to go under the seat in front of me. It's rock hard case. I put 2 padlocks on it for reasons, which everyone loved to take the piss out of me for. I stuck 150 fragile stickers on it. Didn't stop TJ kicking it out of the car. But yeah, I packed it in a really hard Pelican case with a lot of foam, where it was all, once the lid went down, it was compression fit. So I could literally throw the case around, shake it, and there was zero movement. So yeah, really hard Pelican case. And for 80 quid, that's going to last me like any trip I ever need to do with models, because it's quite big as well.
Yeah, it's super nice. I'll go over to TJ next. Tim and Jackson took a similar approach, and I think you sold one to Tim while we were on this trip.
Yeah, I got a Table War. That's the name of the company. I can't remember what the name of the case is. It's just like their hard case. It's really designed for like war gamers. That's like obviously Table War. I've used some of their stuff in the past, years ago, like a little tray to put figures on, and that's what this case is. It's got shelves in it, and they're metal, and you can magnetize the bottom of your figure like little wargaming guys. They'll stick to that. Obviously, I didn't take that route. I epoxied the trays together so they wouldn't flap around in case it got tipped over, and then used blue tack to fasten all my models to it. Blue tack's amazing. It's pretty sturdy, and it worked out really good because it fits into the overhead compartment. They make one that fits underneath the seat. That was not big enough for what I wanted to bring, so I got the medium sized one, and they're not cheap. I'm not going to act like it's you could just, oh yeah, no big deal, buy one. I mean, they're a couple $100. I think they're worth it. I think they're really nice, and it fits in the overhead compartment. And like especially on 787s, and I think most airlines are going to this, the overhead compartment now like rotates back or up. Yeah, rotates back up in, like into the bulkhead to help save space. So yeah, just be prepared. If you put something in the overhead compartment, it is not like how it used to be where it would just close, or you would close the bin down. Now the bin goes up, so it kind of rotated everything back. But since everything was secured, it didn't, nothing moved. The 2 tanks that I brought, one didn't have a turret, so I didn't have to worry about that. The other one, the turret was glued down because of how I displayed it, so I didn't have to worry about the turret falling off or anything. But yeah, highly recommend them. They're nice. The small one that fits under the seat, that one is pretty affordable. I think it's like $90 or $95. To me, that's worth the peace of mind.
Oh yeah, hell yeah. I mean, it's a sweet looking box. And with that, Jackson, you had the same one. I think you took about the same approach.
Yep, I followed TJ's lead. I asked him for advice and ended up buying the same case. One of the things that TJ didn't mention that is actually really awesome about that case is it's got a clear front. So going through TSA is no problem at all. They can see everything in there. And for Telford and SMC last year, I had originally used one of the Christmas ornament boxes that a lot of people use. And even though that's obviously rigid, it's a little bit more flexible. It's just cheap plastic. So there's a lot more, I guess, concern with it getting bumped and, pushed in and stuff. But this case is like built super well. I had no issues or no concerns. I was able to put it in the overhead. I knew people could throw their luggage in front of it and bang it up, and it wasn't going to mess anything up on the inside. And then on top of that, I only brought 3 models, and they all fit on one level of the case. And it's got adjustable shelves, so you can basically put in those insert trays into whatever height you need. And so I was able to put another shelf above all of my models, and I actually ended up using all of that space for a lot of the stuff that I bought at the show. So I would definitely highly recommend it. Like TJ said, they're not cheap at all. I've got the page pulled up, and yeah, they're about 190, and the under the seat one is about 120. But definitely recommended. No complaints, and it was probably the most, I want to say, stress-free like modeling transport case I've ever used, even just to local shows and driving. Like it's going to be my go-to from now on.
Yeah, that's a good point. It might cost a little bit of money, but it'll serve it. I mean, it's going to be there for life. It's not something that you have to worry about replacing or adjusting based on the size of the model because it has really good height as well. I mean, heck, you were able to fit your G13 diorama in there, and that's got some solid vertical to it.
Yeah, absolutely. The adjustability really makes it great. TJ was able to fit a lot more because of that, and yeah, it should fit pretty much anything. I don't think it'd be great for airplane modelers. I don't really know how you'd really fit stuff in there. I mean, 172nd stuff should be fine, but anything bigger than that, I think just the wingspan alone would kind of make it prohibitive. But for armor and figures, it's perfect.
Yeah, depending on the size of the model for an aircraft, you might run into some problems. I brought my Wildcat, which is a relatively small World War II fighter. I fit it in like if you look through the clear plastic, it was facing you, and I built a little cradle essentially out of relatively hard packing foam, like I have a bunch of, and that it rested in there nicely. But yeah, if you had something like an F-14, like in 48 scale, probably not going to fit. Even a 32nd scale World War II airplane probably won't fit. My MiG-21 that I hope to finish this year and before SMC next year, I think will fit because it's long, but it's not very wide, but it is tall. I'm worried about the tail fin and room underneath of it. So we'll see. But yeah, for armor and figures, it's definitely the one to use. But yeah, for aircraft, yeah, probably not.
Yeah, for sure. I took a similar approach. I guess it's a box, you could say, but mine is just a wood box. I lined it with felt, painted it black, and put stickers all over it. For putting my models in the box, the felt actually helps out a lot. It kind of grips to the pieces. But after this trip, and I'll turn it over to Jeff here in a second, I think I'm going to change my approach. But yeah, for me, it's pretty straightforward. I have two boxes. I took one of them with me, obviously. This one was pre-made. I picked it up at like Hobby Lobby. I think it was like a craft box or something, but it easily fit the dimensions. Like I said, put felt inside. And then after I put the models in, all of them on a base, just putting foam blocks in between them. As long as you don't tip it over like more than 45 degrees, stuff ain't going anywhere. And I actually slid that underneath the seat in front of me. But I actually like Jeff's idea the most. So maybe I'll kick it over to him and talk about his transport option.
Yeah, I had to take a different approach just because of a kind of a larger diorama. I actually, as soon as I knew I was going to SMC, it worked out because I hadn't figured out the dimensions of my diorama yet. I had the vehicle, I had part of the structure done. So what I actually did is I built the diorama around the dimensions that United Airlines provided for what would fit under the seat. And then I kind of shrunk that down a little bit, knowing that I would need to build a box around it. So I essentially, created a diorama with, from the beginning, a box being built around it. And the other thing about the dioramas is there's so many different little bits and bobs and pieces and parts that I didn't want them sort of bouncing around too much. So I actually designed the box so that the diorama itself was bolted to the bottom of the box, which made it was kind of a pain in the butt. Like once I got there and had to undo everything because I had to bring a screwdriver with me to unscrew it from the underside of the box. But I tell you what, that thing was like rock solid. I was a little scared it wasn't going to fit under the seat, but it did. And yeah, I was pretty pleased with the outcome of that. I think it'll probably be my standard approach to at least traveling overseas for sure.
Yeah, that box was sweet. I loved all the is it dovetailing, right?
It was a box. It's box joint.
Box joint.
Yeah.
My apologies, listeners.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Come on,
Woodmaster
John.
here.
Jeez.
Jeez, oh man. I haven't taken shop class in 20 years, so thanks for the education, Jeff. Appreciate it.
I got a question. Most of you are using that something where you've got a glass or a plexi thing for TSA. Do you guys feel like that's really an important part of it, letting the TSA and the international people see what's there. John, you don't have that, but you guys think that's a critical piece of it, or does it really matter?
I don't think it really matters. I've traveled without it. This is the first trip I've taken with this container, and I've flown multiple times without it and other things. And I mean, it really is just one of those luck of the draw. It depends on who you get and how they feel that day. Unfortunately, that's the way it is. Those people have an unenviable job, so I try to be sympathetic to them, but they have to deal with the public all day long. But I do think, at least with the plexiglass front, it's better. I think you're less likely to run into problems. I know at Schiphol on the way back, the security people looked at it and I held it up and they're like, oh, they're looking at it, so they kind of get it. I also was selected for additional screening in Schiphol. And the guy that did it let me open everything because I was like, hey, look, everything in here is super fragile. He's like, well, thank you for letting me know. I just need to test this one section in there. Can you open it for me? I was like, absolutely. And it was good. And then in Dulles, I set it down and like three of the TSA agents were like looking at it like, oh, cool, and like shaking their, like nodding, and it went right through and it was no problem.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing is just be like nice to these people. They have a shitty job. They deal with like honestly the scum of the earth sometimes. And as long as you're nice and respectful to them, like TJ said, domestically, you'd be surprised how many war gamers you run into when you're carrying these things through the airport. And then what helps at Schiphol, I believe, is a lot of people from SMC are flying out that morning, so they are getting an introduction to these things from multiple people. Because when we went through, I feel like they kind of had an idea what was going on. And then it was funny. I was standing there waiting for TJ. My box has an Andy Hobby headquarters sticker on the end, and one of their TSA equivalents is like, "Oh, Andy Hobby, famous from YouTube." And I'm like, "Oh, you watch me?" He's like, "Oh yeah, I love him. He's great." And we struck up a conversation. He didn't even know what was in my box. Of course, the sticker told it, but this hobby, I think a lot of people can relate to it. But at the end of the day, as TJ said, just be nice to these people. If you're kind to them, they're not going to screw you over unless you're Jensen. They're not gonna be too bad. But I've found that if you're nice to them, they're nice to you, and you get through pretty easily.
Yeah, I'd agree. Like my case, like everyone keeps joking, looks like a tactical nuke, just a black heavy duty case that have got stickers and locks all over it. So it looks a bit dodgy, but it scans easily. Just all like it's been said, just be polite and cooperate with what they ask and say, and it makes everyone's life easier. As someone who worked in like customer service, if you get someone who's hard work with you, you are definitely going to be hard work with them. So yeah, just be nice.
That's a good rule anyway, just be cool to people. Go a little early and just be cool to people. Well, I want to take this in a different direction if that's okay with you guys. I mean, you went and saw a lot of incredible things before the show. So maybe start with Jackson, but maybe what was your favorite thing that you saw? You went and saw tanks and monuments and museums, and what was your favorite thing that you saw before the show?
It's definitely hard to pick a favorite. I will say basically planning the trip around all the stuff we did before was way less taxing than trying to make SMC a weekend trip like last year. I had a bit more time to get used to everything. I mean, one of the clear, I guess, things that stood above everything else was getting to see the Easy Company foxholes and the Boisjacques. I mean, that was just awesome. And it's one of those, like, you've seen it on screen, so you're able to go there and actually, like, really visualize what it used to look like. But in general, just doing all of the before and after photos. I mean, we all took hundreds. JB printing all those out was awesome, and I thank him a lot for that. And him knowing where all the spots made it super awesome. Saw a lot of armor, a lot of Shermans. I really like going to the Bastogne Barracks. There's just so much there to look at. I think they have like 3 buildings just full of armor. Really nice collection. Getting to see the Sherman at Wilt's was awesome because that was one of those things where it was knocked out, not knocked out, it got stuck in a mud pile. But yeah, I mean, it's basically been in the same area since, 44. So that was one of my favorites, getting to really get up close and look at that and see that it hasn't really changed much in 80 years is awesome. So I don't want to list out everything. I mean, everything was awesome, but I'll put it over to someone else.
JB, I mean, I'm sure the real highlight was seeing TJ eat shit off the back of a Sherman. But aside from that, what was your favorite thing as kind of our tour guide here to Force?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what Jackson has said, I had the opportunity, a lot of these were repeats for me. So it was great just seeing the reaction of everybody with me, because that's how I felt a summer and a half ago in these places of holy ground. But I think if I had to pick one, maybe I'll pick two, and I'll go quick on the first one. The Glees, I love that little town. I thought our lunch was awesome there, and just going around seeing the King Tiger in the museum there. But really, the high point for me was it was the most casual experience, but it was the most fun I felt because it truly showed the community we have. And that was the tour of Hopefullies with JC Windles. So JC is a scale modeler, lives in the small town of Hopefullies, Belgium. And we met up with him on, let's see, Friday morning, I believe it was. And we took a tour of his town. And what was also great was Boss Slots drove all the way down from the Netherlands and met us too. So we had two folks from two different countries meet up with about 10 Americans. And we saw the Panther at Hopefullies. We saw the little museum they're looking to create. All of the artwork there is done by JC. But what really was a lot of fun and resonated with me was the personal tour that he gave of his town. And it was something that you can't get anywhere else. We, talked about the Panther, and then we walked down to the actual spot where the Panther fell into the river, talked about, crew perished in that Panther, and then how did they get it out? How long did it sit there? When they moved it up? And then in addition to that, there were other Panthers knocked out and hopefully and other vehicles destroyed. So we went to those sites as well. So we crossed into the main town. We walked over another small bridge, looked where a Panzer III was destroyed. We went down an alleyway, across another bridge. Like, this whole little town is just gorgeous. And it's unfortunate that he said 80 to 90% of it was destroyed by bombing during the conflict, just because of the German occupation. And I believe it was the RAF. Thanks, Jensen, for that. But what was interesting is, despite the town being almost leveled, you could still pick out landmarks to associate with then and now photographs. So we saw where the Panther went into the river. Like I said, the Panzer III, beautiful little town. The fall foliage, the flowers are still blooming. And then we go down another alleyway and saw where a Panther was destroyed next to a small church, which the small church is still there. So you can see it. You can put a reference to it. And then we walked up this big hill, went back to the original Panther, and we hopped in the car and went to one last spot about 2 kilometers outside of town where another Panther was destroyed that I didn't know. I had never been to that site, but it was cool. He had the picture right there, pulled it up, and we talked about, where it was, the building is still there. What's hilarious is it's got this like finger pointing sign, and we joke like, this is where the Panther was, because it like legit points right where it was. So top story for me, easily that personal time with JC in his town, telling his town's personal story with us folks, and then obviously Boss joining us as well. You can't get any better than that. And the theme of the trip was we picked up modelers along the way, seeing Andy Argent and Dan Brooker in L'Église as well. So that's what it is for me, is the Hopefullies time.
Man, sounds amazing. Jensen, what about you? What was your favorite thing?
Really hard to choose. There was just so much compacted into it seems like such a short trip. We were like, oh, do you remember that thing we saw like 2 days ago? And everyone was like, that was this morning. It's like, oh. But yeah, it's hard from like, Clairvaux is such a beautiful place. And then whenever I think of the trip, I think of that place. It's location-wise, it's scenery, the chateau, it's just everything about that place. It sticks in my head. It's a beautiful place, and the fact that literally just going up the hill, you can see that famous shot of the Stug and the Sherman in the cemetery. An image I've seen so many times, but then when you're there, it's like, oh shit, this is the place. I didn't realize, like, seeing the 360 view, how steep it was, the environment it was. It's just like, wow, this is actually the exact place that this happened. But it's so hard to pick one. But yeah, in my head, I always think Clovo, and I've been telling everyone about Clovo. It's just, yeah, it's hard to nail a specific favorite. It's just my favorite was from the time I landed, from the time I set off from the airport. Just that's my favorite. It was just an amazing trip, which I'll just remember forever.
So Jeff, as kind of a newbie to the group, so to speak, in this context, but aside from hobby stores with amazing strip wood, what was your favorite thing that you saw along the way before the show?
Yeah, I mean, I just +1 to hopefully Zan Clairvaux. When I was, talking to my family about the trip, those were some of the highlights. But yeah, what I would add is our time in Bastogne. I mean, Bastogne probably the stereotypical place that everybody thinks of when they think of the Ardennes, but that part of the trip was epic for me. It was epic because of obviously being there. I had been to the town before, but it was on a family trip and we didn't spend a whole lot of time looking at tanks or anything. So being able to go there with this crew, walk that town, see the Sherman in the center of town there was cool. But then I would say that what made it really epic was John scored this amazing Airbnb there. It was super super sweet. We hung out there. We drank a little. The night got ahead of us. Before we knew it, it was 10 o'clock. We hadn't eaten dinner. I'm like, whoa, I don't even remember how many of us, a bunch of us set out to find food in Bastogne at 10 o'clock at night. We didn't find any food. Nothing was open, but we did find the Sherman again. And one of the highlights of the entire trip was these, how should I say, drunken photos of us climbing on top of the Sherman. And there's this epic photo, I think I posted it on Facebook, of Bonanni, like just on top of the back of it, like, kind of straddling the turret with his arm in the air with the mist of Bastogne. It's epic. That picture alone describes the entire trip. It's like we sort of conquered the universe. Modelers unite in Bastogne to take over the world. It was cool.
Man, if the pictures don't give people FOMO, that response definitely will. Well, we'll wrap it up with TJ. TJ, what was your favorite of the things that you saw before the show?
It's there's a couple. So obviously the Bois-Jacques was amazing. As an American and as someone that loved Band of Brothers and loved the story of Easy Company, and looked to those guys as the pinnacle of American heroism. That was cool. That was like treading on hollowed ground, really. And I took a little bit of dirt home in a little jar. I think most of us did, and I took some home for my brother, and he was like, "Oh, you can just take their dirt." I was like, "That's our dirt, dude. That is our dirt. Easy Company paid for that dirt with blood, sweat, and tears. So I'm going to help myself to a small jar of it." So that was pretty cool. And the Wiltz Sherman, the one that I fell off the back of, that was actually pretty cool too. The story of the tank isn't that exciting. It got bogged down in the mud, and they had to abandon it during the battle, and there it sat until after the war, and it was recovered. It is pretty neat because there's a little plaque next to it that kind of tells the story. The commander of the tank came back, I think it was like in the 80s or 90s. He was an old man, and helped rededicate the memorial. So that was cool, and it was just nice to see because that vehicle is in almost pristine condition. It's in pretty good shape, externally at least. I don't know what the inside looks like. So that was neat. I like seeing the ones that are in really good shape. That was pretty cool. And of course, yeah, Bastogne was great. But yeah, it's either the Bois-Jacques or the Wilt Sherman. I'm kind of tied with those two. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, I'll just echo all of this, and then also note, in Bastogne, around the table, showing off the show before the show is always a pleasure. Lester and his buddies showing up, that was great. Again, Lester Plaskett's like, "Hey, I'm in Bastogne." I'm like, "We're in Bastogne." He's like, "Shoot me at an address," and he just shows up later. It just, again, highlights the community we have. And yeah, if we're ever in the same city, everyone let us know and just come on over, show off models, talk good stuff. But going past the trip, before the trip, we roll into Eindhoven Friday evening. So for our listeners, I will say we crammed a lot into a small amount of time. And if we had to do it over again, maybe an extra day would be nice. It's almost like you want that Friday to ease into the show. And we just went full steam into it, showing up at the hotel around 6, 7 o'clock at night, and then had dinner with the Four Corners folks. But as soon as you show up at the NH Königshof outside of Eindhoven, you're in the spot for scale modeling. At that moment in the world, it is the spot. Everyone who's anyone, at least a lot of, I'd say damn near everyone who's anyone, is in Eindhoven for this event. And you walk in the lobby, and it doesn't stop until you check out at 7 a.m. on Monday. So for our listeners, if you do go to the show and you get a room at the hotel, I would recommend I would recommend showing up. Like for us, we packed a lot in. Next year, I'd love to get there Friday either morning or Friday midday or even Thursday night, just because a lot of those folks from abroad are showing up, and you can have a nice transition into the mayhem that is Saturday and Sunday. But showing up at 6, 7 o'clock at night, line for check-in was a little long, but actually it went really fast. I feel like it was only 10, 15 minutes. And then we got to our rooms, dumped our stuff, and proceeded to go to dinner with the Four Corners folks. But really, that's how the weekend starts on Friday. If you go, maybe show up a little early. I think we're going to try to do that next year just to ease into it. But yeah, once you get there, it's game on until the show opens Saturday morning and nonstop until Monday. So with that, on Saturday, the show opens at 10 a.m. officially. Vendors start setting up Friday. And then also, I think they're finishing up probably Saturday morning, but most of them are set up on Friday. The show officially opens on Saturday morning at 10. People, I think vendors maybe show up probably, I would assume, between 8 and 9. But it's mayhem, but it's a good mayhem. They're very efficient. For people that are listening, when you go for the first time, when you enter your model, instead of waiting in the pre-reg line, that's a little long, but it goes quick. If there is a line, just go dump your stuff on the table and then go back to the line. It makes it a lot easier. But with that, maybe I'll just take a pause and we'll go around the room and just talk about what we entered and what categories they were in. Scott screwed up his entry. I placed it in the right category, but he put it in the wrong category. I'm just gonna call that out right now. That's all Scott's fault. But otherwise, I think most of us were accurate in where we put our stuff. But I guess I'll just start off with me real quick. I dropped in the M1340 in Masters Armor. I dropped in 2 facades and Masters dioramas. I didn't know where they went. They don't tell a story, but I wanted to bring and show them, which I thought was cool. And then I put a Jagdpanzer L70 in the judges cabinet, which is a true honor. And we'll come back to that aspect. But Jackson, tell everybody what you brought.
Yeah, so like I said, I stayed up 2 days trying to get stuff done for the trip. I was kind of in a spot where I realized I hadn't really done that much modeling this year. I had really only completed one model this year, and most of what I'd completed prior to that, that I thought was up to par, I had already brought to SMC last year. So I wanted to kind of hustle and get some stuff done. I ended up bringing the M4A2, which I have posted. It's my Marine Corps Sherman. I ended up building a base for that. And then I haven't posted photos of it, but the Swiss G13, Tecum's new-ish release, I've been working on that mostly this year, and I got that finished along with the base for it. And then it was definitely like a last-minute decision, but about 2 weeks before the trip, I cracked the box on the Mini Art Tempo. That's something that we've all kind of been getting ready to build, and I decided to just start it early and see if I could get it done. I basically did like a little Coca-Cola delivery truck. I did a little base for that, along with I had a scarecrow on it, which is actually the first figure I've painted. So the M42 and the G13 went into just 135th Masters armor. I think it's 148th and up. And then the Mini Art Tempo went into civilian utility vehicles. That category, I think, is a little bit. I don't really know if I placed it in the right category. Some people tended to place that sort of vehicle in utility. There's also a just civilian vehicle category. I saw similar entries in both. I think in the future, I think the utility category is a bit more for like construction equipment and more like rusted vehicles and stuff, whereas the civilian category is a bit more for kind of like your pristine, glossy vehicles. I think you could place it in either and be fine. I'm not sure if I did place it in the right one, but that's what I ended up putting it in.
Nice. Yeah. And for our listeners, I'll just mention real quick. We mentioned master, standard. There's also beginner. SMC has a tiered system because of just at this show, you will see a wide diversity of skill level. You will see legit artists and those just entering the hobby. And I think it's important to underscore that everyone is welcome under the roof here at the show SMC, I should say. So if it's your first time, getting into the hobby, beginner is your category. If you place at, typical shows, I'd go standard. And then masters is for those folks that are routinely taking firsts and best ofs at local, regional, and national shows, just to give you an idea behind what skill set you're looking at. With that context, I'll kick it back to TJ.
Yeah, to touch on what Jackson was saying, for something like a tempo, yeah, it is kind of, is it a utility vehicle? Kind of, yeah, but it's also just not, because it's just a little tooling around vehicle too. So that one, you could have gotten away with either one. And it's important to note that they're not super strict about that kind of stuff at SMC. This isn't an IPMS show where there's, this is for 1/48 scale American inline engine aircraft only that's served in the Pacific, right? It's not, they don't get into that kind of minutia. Case in point, Scott's tractor should have been in utility vehicles because it's a tractor, but it was entered in civilian vehicles because it is a civilian vehicle. It doesn't matter. They're like, oh, just put it. It doesn't matter unless it affects the metal chance. They're not going to move it somewhere else. That is the important distinction that we were given as judges. Don't move if it's in the wrong category. Don't move it if it affects the metal chances. If it doesn't affect the metal chances, then yeah, go ahead, call the head judge. They'll move it, and we'll get on with our lives. So, but as far as my entries go, I brought 7 things. I brought 2 figures for fantasy painting standard. I brought 2 figures for historical painting standard, and I brought 2 vehicles for military vehicles master, and then 1 airplane for 48 scale aircraft masters. In aircraft, there's a little bit more of a split. They do small scale, which is 72nd scale and below, 48 scale, and then 32nd scale and above as a separate category, both masters and standards. And then for military vehicles, the category we entered in, it's 48 scale and up. So it's 48 scale to 16 scale. And then there is a separate scale for 72nd scale and smaller as far as armor goes. So, yep, that's what I brought. A pretty diverse list of stuff, I think. But yeah.
Nice. Yeah. And going back to your point, TJ, the only models we actually moved some just because the 48th was it's a little nuanced. I think if you look at the category, like, does it go in this category or that one? But we moved like 2 or 3 models. And that was an easy, and really the moving, I think half of them, we moved them because they were just placed incorrectly. And for the judging system Emperor, it just made it easier to put them in the right category because they are cataloged under that in the application that's on your phone. With that, we'll turn it over to the tactical nuke master who carried the football. What was in the football, Jensen?
So in the football, there was the M3 Stuart with the barn and base and all that. No intention of that actually placing at all. My main objective in the last few days was just get it on the table. And I did. So there was that. I brought my first in Bastogne M4 A3E2 Jumbo. Yeah, that went in Masters Ordnance for tanks. I'm good at remembering category names, as you can tell. I brought 2 aircraft, 148th. They went in Masters as well. It was BF-109 E1 Legion Condor and a BF-109 E4. The E4 got highly commended. Not a brag. Yeah, what else did I bring? I think that was it. I think that's actually all I brought. I think I put 4 things on the table. It was that M3 with the whole base, and that took up a lot of space. Not bringing that to any other shows, I'll have a lot more room for a lot more things. Yeah,
you also threw it around the table in Bastogne. You about gave Jeff a heart attack.
Yeah, it turns out I'm quite blasé with my models. I'm not a handle with curse sort of guy. I treat them like pebbles.
Except you put 4,000 fragile stickers on your box.
Which proved my box works. Oh yeah, I brought the LVT. We did a swap.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, you're regretting that already. Like, yeah.
Oh, geez. Can I get that back? Can I return to sender? I'm within the 30-day return period, so I feel like there's no fee on that one. So we'll round this out. Jeff, what did you bring?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, one diorama, and I'm a slow modeler, unlike y'all who have multiple models. I can usually get one in a year. So yeah, I brought a diorama called Size Matters, which was a British Churchill Avery coming ashore a couple of days after D-Day. It's a scene set sort of to show the Avery its intended purpose, taking out bunkers. So there was a scratch-built bunker with a 50 millimeter gun in placement, and it was essentially meant to kind of show the how the petard mortar of the Avery was used, because it kind of it's loaded and used like a shotgun, and so there's a local Norman a farmer there at the scene as well with his pheasant shotgun. So the comparison between the two, and the armament kind of denotes the Size Matters piece. But yeah, it was cool to bring that, and I entered it in the Masters Diorama and Storytelling category.
So I also forgot to mention, I brought 2 things for 2 other people. I brought a figure that Mark Sprayberry painted and gave to me at Atlanta earlier this year. It's a Teutonic Knight, 75 millimeter Knight. He went into historical painter standard, and I also brought Brian Krieger's Sea Pig SAFS suit that he gifted me in Texas last year for putting together the Machine Group build that we did. That went into Rise of the Machines, which is their name for the kind of the science fiction-ish category, and that went on the master side. And then I also brought a piece for the judges cabinet that we'll talk about later. It was a Machine and Krieger piece. I would judge sci-fi, so I figured I would bring something science fiction-y to put in there, but that was cool.
I'm just curious for any of the listeners out there. John did a great job documenting the show. There's hundreds and hundreds of photos on our Posse page and albums that you can look through, but I want to kind of get from your individual perspectives as people who went to the show. Start with Jackson, but what are maybe 2 or 3 pieces that you saw that really just inspired you, that made you go kind of wow, and maybe brought back with you as far as sparking ideas or some motivation to want to do something similar?
Yeah, so like you said, there was a lot of really, really good work. I definitely made an effort this year to spend more time in the contest hall. I think a lot of us can agree that it gets very packed and you kind of have to take it in shifts. You can't really be in there for too long because you definitely get pushed around a little bit and you need a break and some fresh air. Yeah, some of my favorites, I didn't actually get to meet the person who did it, and I'm obviously not sure who it was, but someone had done the Airsets M10 in front of the Chevy sign. It's a really famous photo of one of the M10s, or Panthers, I should say. But that was really well done. He, I think, kind of depicted it as it was knocked out and all the crew was bailing, and he had done the whole building with the Chevy sign in the back. And it was just a really well done piece. It caught my eye because it was massive. It just had a presence on the table, and obviously getting to see the town where the M10s were, and the building that Chevy sign was on is gone now, but JB pointed out that location as we drove past it, and we got to see another location where a photo of one of the Panthers had been taken. So that was really cool. It just felt relevant to our trip, so it caught my eye. One of the other ones was there was an LVT A4 that had been done, and I did actually get to meet the person who did it. I was taking photos of it, and he had a little piece of paper that talked about some of the work he had done on it. And that's kind of an interesting vehicle to depict well, because the only game in town is the Italeri kit, and it's not great. But there's not many builds of it either, I've noticed. It's something that's always been on my list. There's a lot of work that goes into making one that actually looks good, and he did an amazing job. I can't remember his name. I know we met. I apologize. I was looking at the photo I took of his sheet to see if he had put his name on there, and unfortunately he didn't. But one of the things that stuck out to me about that build in addition to just it being a really nice piece and him putting a lot of work into making it accurate, was he had done this really interesting technique for the water. He basically had it coming ashore at Iwo Jima, and he had done this. It was almost like a painted water. It wasn't like 3D or anything. Like, it wasn't done with like the old aluminum foil method or like resin water or anything. It was completely flat and painted, and it was really awesome. And I've got the sheet pulled up here. He said that the ocean and surf were created as part of the ocean art method, cells and lacing. And he basically has a list of all of the materials he used on it. But it was a very artistic approach to water, and it just looked so different than anything else I've seen, and it was a really cool effect. And it was awesome getting to talk to him about it. Because like I said, he saw me taking photos and he came over and he was like, "Oh, do you like this piece?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he was like, "I'm the one who did it." I'm like, "That's awesome." So we talked a bit about that. So that one stuck out to me. And then one of the other ones was Gunnar Balmer. He had been working on a Vietnam era gun truck. It's named the Matchbox. And that was one of the pieces that I had seen being worked on Facebook. I'd been following it closely because I had started a gun truck last year. And so it was one of those things where it's like I didn't know it was going to be at SMC, and I was walking around looking at the tables. I saw it and I'm like, wait a minute, I know that piece. And so I took a bunch of photos of that. It's super well done. He had a really nice effect on those gun trucks. The armament normally sticks over the side because he needed to be able to aim down whenever they got ambushed. And so one of the things he had done on it was he had weathered basically the end of the 50 cals that stuck out with the mud, because those trucks are massive. Their wheels are massive. They fling up a lot of mud. You can see it in the photos. And so seeing him depict like all the mud flung up on the underside of the 50 is just, it was an awesome touch. And then I don't remember what day it was. I think it might have been Sunday. JB might correct me, but I think the last day of the show we met up with a bunch of people. JB put out a post and said, "Hey, we're going to meet at the cafeteria at this time. If you're, a fan of the Posse and you want to see everyone, like, come out." And JB introduced me to him, and him and I talked a lot about that piece. So yeah, that and the LVT were the two that really stuck out, because I was able to actually meet the people behind them, talk to them about their work, share projects and stuff. And that's honestly one of my favorite part about any show I go to, is getting to meet the people behind it.
TJ, what are a couple of pieces that really inspired you?
Dan Sankey's gold medal winning diorama of the Hetzer, and I think it was in Prague. I've built that same Hetzer, so of course part of the reason why I really like it, it's the captured one that I didn't obviously build it like he did, because it's a whole diorama with some resistance fighters, because that's what it was used as. It was used as a barricade. It's called Chawat, I think is what they renamed it, which I think means victory or strength, or I can't remember what it means. But yeah, just all the sculpted figures, and Dan's like the coolest dude on the planet, so seeing that was pretty cool.
Danaconda.
Yeah, the Danaconda. I really liked the pretty much everything in the utility vehicle category. Yeah, Andre Gretzkin's whatever that thing was, some sort of steam shovel. I don't know if it was actually a steam shovel. That's what it looked like. It was like blue and all rusted out, and just God, it was so good. There was so much cool stuff. I really like that kind of modeling, and seeing all that stuff was like very, very inspiring. I can't really pick any of the figures because they're all just so damn good. It's a little hard to like get a good look at the figures, because it is predominantly a figure show. 2/3 of the entries there are figures. And so most of the people there are figure painters, and they love to just all look at the figures, which is, it's hard not to. So it's kind of difficult to get a good look, because it is crowded from the time that contest hall opens to the time it closes. It is freaking crowded. After I judged, I walked around and looked at some stuff, so that was nice. One of the things, and I judge it, and it's called like hold on, I gotta look to remember what it's called. The hunter becomes the prey. It was in the Rise of Machines. I feel like it probably should have been in storytelling, because it was a diorama with a bunch of converted figures and some scratch built, kind of steampunky looking monkey robots. and it was like these British guys that were like investigating some sort of like temple ruin, something out of like Indiana Jones, but they also had like, they had, one had not a Bren gun, a Lewis gun, machine gun, but it had, like electronics on it. Like it was very clearly like old timey, but like steampunk at the same time, and all the guns had that kind of stuff. And one of the guys is like holding up, I think, like the remains of one of these little monkey robots, and behind him, like the big one's like getting ready to like pounce on him, and he doesn't see it, but all of his little compatriots that are on the stairs, they see it, and they're like, one of them's jumping, the other one's like starting to run away. I think the one guy's like picking up his rifle to shoot it, and it was just really, really well done. The whole scene was cool. I got the story. It was beautifully modeled, and the vegetation was phenomenal. I really, really like that. That was probably one of my favorite things that I saw.
Jensen, what are a couple of pieces that maybe caught your eye and inspired you?
So there was a couple. I was speaking to Peter Rusher a bit before the show about a project he was bringing with him, and I didn't realize this was going in the judge's cabinet. And it was the Cowboy of Normandy. It was the crashed P-47, and the whole story behind that, like, and seeing it in pictures was amazing. Then seeing it in person, it's like, whoa, like that's really good. I'm more amazed because he finished it just a short time before the show. I genuinely thought it was going in the competition, but it was done and put in the judges' cabinet. It's just really good. For some reason I thought it was like 148th, and then seeing it, it's just like this is big. This is a very big build. Yeah, the P-47's modeled beautifully. The figures painted really well. The destroyed, like ripped up groundwork from the crashed plane, all done. I don't like saying done correctly, but it looks just right. And the whole story behind it is just, yeah, it's not just a guy shooting from a crashed plane. There's a whole paragraph that you can read on the front of the display, and it's just really freaking cool. That one caught my eye, obviously. For a while, I was looking around, I was like, I can't find it. And then it's like, oh, it's in the judges camp. Me and Jackson were going past. It's like, shit, there it is. So there was that one. Then there was it was a diorama vignette. I think more of a diorama, definitely a diorama, of a restoration of a Spitfire. It's called A Labor of Love Restoration Project 1986, and it's by Norbert Schult. It's wonderful. It's like a brick factory. The Spitfire is literally like, it's all paneled off. The engine's missing. There's no wings on it. And I liked it so much because I was trying to do like a workshop style build, and then having seen this one, I was like, that has everything that was missing from mine. Everything was deliberate. Everything was right. It was just, yeah, I like saying everything had a purpose. It wasn't just put there. It was all correct. It was well lit. That was an issue I had with mine. It was very dark. It was just everywhere you looked had a story. And I just thought it was just a beautifully put together, beautifully executed piece of work. So I had to mention that. Then I had to have a look at the figures. Like TJ said, looking at figures was actually really hard work because there are so many, and it gets very busy down there. And to look at small individual figures, it's like, I'll come back later, and then it's like, I'll come back tomorrow, and it's like, oh, it's gone. So you have to rely on the photos. So I make no secret that Lucas Zaba's like my favorite figure painter. So I had to go and see more of his work in person. And it was the one, I believe he won his Golden Demon award for. I don't know his official name. It's like a bionic shark being ridden by some green guy. That's as descriptive as I can be with it. But yeah, it's seeing that actually in person, because I know a lot of figure painters paint for photography, if that makes sense. They paint it in a way that when it's like photographed, it looks right. So when you get to see it in person, it can look a bit different. But these just don't. You look at them, it's like, shit, that's really good, and it can look as even better than it does online with all the professional lighting and stuff. I love Lucas's work just because it's high contrast, very smooth blending, almost HDR kind of look, and I just love it. And every time I see his work, I try and learn something new from it. But yeah, those were I can't say those were the three that stood out, because literally thousands of pieces stood out. But off memory, they're the first three that came to my head.
Oh, it sounds like those are some great pieces. Like you said, the photographs, it's just one right after another
Yep.
another. It's just, really, really inspirational. So, Jeff, what about you? What are a couple of pieces that maybe caught your eye?
Yeah, there was two that come to mind. There was one in, I'm trying to remember what category it was. It was figure vignette, but it was a really simple piece called Deliverance, and it was based in a concentration camp. So very obviously a somber subject, but it was inside sort of the of a building with a three-tier bunk, and there was just one sort of prisoner in there with with his hand out with a yellow butterfly coming out of the hand. And at first glimpse it was just really well done, but then to learn that it was based on a poem that this Czechoslovakian internment prisoner wrote, talking about the last butterfly he ever saw before he was imprisoned in the camp. And of course it documents the whole his progression and his unfortunate demise in Auschwitz in 44. So it was just really poignant, and I think from a model making perspective it was really well done. And the reason I was really drawn to it is as I look at my progression and journey, I thinking about wanting to try and pare back and pare down, and how can I be a storyteller with fewer things and fewer items and that sort of thing. So this one just really spoke to me because it was super simple, but it was really, really powerful. Don't remember the artist's name. I got to go find it. And then there was another piece. One of our travel buddies, Matt, who was with us, we both really love this piece called Aksum Jabos, which is, it's kind of a meme at this point, right? It's usually like, oh, the rockets are falling on us, we've got to watch out. This was really cool because you didn't really get the title and the story at first look, but it was a scene depicting some German prisoners, and there was a guy, a U.S. Guy watching over them, but he was kind of sitting in a tree, and he was making paper airplanes, and he was throwing the paper airplanes at the prisoners. And so that was the whole tie into the title, which I just thought was really clever. And it was one of those things where you had to really look to sort of get that connection before you saw those little paper airplanes. So again, the storytelling on that piece was cool. The storytelling on all the dioramas was just oh my gosh, it just blew me away. Super inspirational.
So Jeff, that piece was sculpted by Christos Apatopoulos. He was the sculptor, and then Nicholas, I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name. He was the painter. So it was a dual entry. One guy sculpted and the other guy painted. Yeah, Nicholas Triantifilou, something like that. He posted a lot on both of those names.
They post a lot on the AK page. Their work's amazing.
Yeah, I think
it's awesome.
They collaborate a lot, I think.
Yeah.
That's kind of a unique approach. I kind of like that. It's something that might be kind of fun to do. If you had somebody that you work with, it's at a very high level, and you could do a first-rate collaboration like that. John, let's wrap up with you on this. What are a couple of pieces that maybe spoke to you?
Well, you bastards picked everything I wanted to say. So, but no, this just goes to show everything at SMC you can talk about, because it's that quality of work, and it's everything from the juniors category. So shout out to all the juniors that entered. The best of was a young girl from Spain. I believe it was Spain, and she painted a Focke-Wulf 190 in desert. I mean, you could put that in the adult category. It was gorgeous, and major shout out to her. And I think her dad is part of it as well. And it's just great to see that family interaction. And it reminds me a lot of my childhood. So I thought that was super cool. And then also just the way they recognize the junior entrants at the award ceremony, and the applause and the camaraderie there around that. It's one piece, but really that whole genre and how to encourage them, I thought was, you take that back and it's just awesome. So some of the, adult categories, I guess you could say, that stuck out to me that haven't been mentioned already. Rowdy Flugzoid work. He's out of the Netherlands as well, I believe. He hangs out with Marco and Martin a lot. His destroyed Do-335, the Feifel on on the ground, essentially burned out. I mean, that thing incredible. I think it's the Zukimura kit maybe, but he just nailed it. It's you could take a macro shot of that and crop out, like, just have a picture of the model and the groundwork. You'd think it was real, to be honest. It was that good. Obviously, a lot of the entries that the other folks had said. One of the sci-fi categories that stuck out to me, and I think TJ actually judged it, so feel free to jump in, TJ, is there was a set of 4 Machining Krieger scenes, all in 35th scale, all with a different, like, not only a different subject, but also a different color palette, I guess you could say. And then having all 4 of them together, I thought was really cool. There was one with like McDonald's and a broken arch. There was one with like a green bomb. There was I think it was a UN scene, and then there was a like an African scene with a hyena and dog. And I just thought the breadth and depth of those 4 subjects and the execution and the framing of them, I just thought it was really well done. That stuck out to me as something really cool. A couple other things, Dan Brooker's ARL, it looks exactly like the one I saw in Strasbourg 2 summers ago. It's freaking amazing. Kev Smith's 251, we highlighted this in the regular episode. Goddamn gorgeous. And then from a figure perspective, someone that I think is amazing. He was super nice to me there too. Just Magnus Wagnerberg's Master Chief. It was not the piece that won the best, essentially fantasy figure, but he brought, I think, 3 or 4 pieces, and it was one that I thought was just awesome. He has the way he does his colors, and dare I say OSL, or, well, I mean, they're literally art in 3D. And then I'll end with a gentleman. I barely saw him, waved at him basically as we were going by, but I've always admired his work, and it was cool to see it in person. He goes by Bulletproof Models online. His name's Oscar Ebri Casola. Maybe I got that a little wrong, but I know he brought a few pieces. He had the M60 Blazer and Master's Armor. He had a Panther diorama, and then he also had a smaller composition diorama with a Renault and a few Germans in front of a facade. And those kind of pieces stick out to me because I've seen them online so much. And then just getting the opportunity to see them in person. And again, I just feel bad not getting to say hi to him more than just literally passing by. So hopefully I get to talk to him again, but I loved his work. It was great to see.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate all of that. I'm going to switch the spotlight over and point it directly at TJ. So TJ, you were selected to be a first-time judge. And so I'd like to, if you don't mind, maybe talk about what that experience was like, maybe, the judges prep and everything, but what that experience was like judging at SMC.
So I'll full disclosure, I was extremely nervous. Look, I have made no mistake about the fact that I think I'm a pretty good modeler. I'm not one of these like falsely humble people. Like, I know my models are pretty good. I know that. I know what a good model looks like. I know what it takes to do one, and I've worked really hard at it. With that being said, I definitely do not consider myself as the same level as a lot of the people that were invited to judge. And especially after hearing Robert Krombecky talk on Chris Medding's Model Philosopher podcast a couple weeks before we went, and hearing him speak with the 2 chief judges and them talking about what they look at to choose when they choose judges, I felt out of my league a lot. And I think I can't remember who I told. I told one of the people I was with, one of you guys, when I was sitting in the judges room, when I walked into the judges room for the briefing, I wear a Fitbit that tracks my heart rate. My heart rate was 106. I was extremely nervous because, I was in a room with the best in the world on both the figure side and the modeling side, and I felt very out of place when I sat down. And I sat down next to Jose Brito, who was on my team, and he's a guy that I've admired his work for a number of years. And then Chloe Plattner sat down in front of me, and she was also on my team. And again, another person whose work I've admired for some time. And it was it was pretty crazy. And John was sitting to my left, and we just kind of looked at each other and looked around the room, and we're like, holy fucking shit. Like, this is real life right now. This is nuts. And then the judges briefing kicked off, and it was awesome, listening to Robert talk about SMC and the standard that he expects the judges on the jury to uphold, and I guess, for lack of a better term, the morals that he expects us to, the values that he expects us to exhibit while we are judging the pieces, really resonated with me. And I make no mistake that I was extremely humbled and honored to be selected to the jury. How I tricked someone into it, I haven't figured out yet. But yeah, the judges meeting was pretty good. There are some pretty funny things that happened. There's a certain person who I don't need to name because I'm sure everyone knows who it is. He was a topic of a little bit of ridicule, some derisive comments from the other jurists, and yeah, all of it I feel deserved based on last year, and that kind of set the mood. Like, that kind of lowered the temperature for me a little bit. I'm like, okay, like we can have fun doing this too, because I take I take my shit pretty serious, and I took the being invited pretty serious. But okay, if we can laugh about something that is in retrospect pretty funny, then I'm here for that. And yeah, it was really cool. And one of the things that really stuck out to me that Robert said when he was giving his brief was, we're here to reward what the modeler does. And one of the things he said was, on average, they look for or expect 20% of all entries to medal. That's not a hard and fast rule. If it deserves a medal, then you give it a medal. That's why they asked you to do it. You're the arbiter of that. If they think that there's something not right, the head judges will intervene. But like you said, look, you may get a category and 40% of the models deserve a medal. You may get a category and 10% of the models deserve a medal. The end of the day, as long as we're hovering around the 20, 21, 22% of entries getting medals, he's okay with that. And then to that end, he said, when you're looking for gold pieces, especially specifically in the master's classes, it's important to remember that give a gold if you feel like it deserves a gold, but keep in the back of your mind that gold medal will set the precedent for the show and for the modeling world in general for the next year, because people see a gold medal from SMC as what the level is currently in the hobby. So the idea was, give a gold where it's deserved, but be not necessarily cautious, but thoughtful about how you give that gold. Make sure that it truly earns the gold. It can be good, but not necessarily be a gold good. And that really stuck with me, because I'm like, yeah, you're right. I look at the gold medal from last year and from this year and previous years, I've looked at all the photos from the shows I've been to, and I'm like, okay, I see, and it is matching what we expect at the highest level of modeling, and especially in figure painting. That's a whole separate thing. To me, I think this felt maybe more towards the figure guys, because that the skill level there is just so incredibly high. Yeah, that one really, we discussed it afterwards, I think over numerous beers later on. And then yeah, so after the meeting, we got like 30 minutes before we had to actually judge. So that was the only time that I actually got to go spend any of my money on Saturday. So I ran immediately to the HD model stand and bought some stuff there. But yeah, once we got into the judging room, I kind of like calmed down a little bit. It was also hot as balls in that room when we were judging, and I was wearing a long sleeve flannel shirt and I was dying. Ah, God, I was so hot. I was probably glistening on my forehead too, which I'm sure made me look really nice. But once we got into our team, me and Jose and Chloe, everything went really smooth. We got into a good rhythm. We got into a nice pace, and we were done pretty quick. But I judged 4 categories. The first 2 were really small, and the sci-fi one was a little bit larger, but also not that big. Not like any of the armor categories. So, but yeah, they gave us snacks while we were doing it, so we could take a break, and it was really nice. I think we were done by 7. I think that's when we voted on the best ordnance, which was really cool because the ordnance judges vote on the best ordnance. The figure guys vote on the 2 best figures. So that's pretty neat. as a figure painter myself too, obviously not the level they are and the judges are. I would have liked to have, had a say in what the best figure was, but I was an ordnance judge, so I got to say in what was the best ordnance. But overall, using Emperor as a program to judge was super easy. We ran into the same stuff that you run into in anything else, any other show. People put stuff in the wrong category. They didn't label it right. I think in the sci-fi category, we couldn't find some of the stuff in standard. And then when we got into the masters, we found it after we'd already closed the category out. So then we had to call Ivan over and I can't remember, maybe Bart came over to help us too, so we could unlock the category so we could judge the piece. That it's just the same. I mean, humans are involved, so silly mistakes will be made. But overall, it was very, very, very smooth. Plus, I think JB's mentioned before, it's nice to actually get to look at some of the stuff. And then when I was done judging, I went around and looked at all the other stuff, especially the figures. That's pretty much the only time I got to look at the figures, even though I was trying not to get in the way of the judges, because they have their own system with how they'll move these are all the goals. They put all the goals together. They put all the silvers. So like stuff is shuffling around. But that being said, I was still able to go over and actually not have three people deep in front of me looking at the figures. So I did a little bit of that too.
I think my favorite part about what you said was that Robert came into the judge's room and really spoke about ethics and values and the value prop that the show brings. I think that's so important. That's amazing. I think that really shows a dedication to the ethos and the blood of this show. And John, I know you've judged there before. Anything that you wanted to kind of add to TJ's description?
Yeah, I'll echo a lot of what TJ said, and I had a lot of those same emotions last year. And to be honest, I still have those emotions. You are walking into a room with literally the world's best modelers, and you've been asked to stand there and be a peer with them in this evaluation process. And it's interesting. The badges they give you, they say jury, they don't say judge. And judge is that word, and it's hard to explain, but the attitude towards evaluating people's work is simply that. It's evaluation. You're a jury. I appreciated what Robert said at the beginning, and I even wrote it down. It was along the lines of, at SMC, we're judging, we're evaluating and we're looking at creativity and execution. The minutia of a road wheel raised is like, that's water under the bridge. It's, what is the story being told? What is the modeler looking to deliver? What have they delivered, and how do we reward them? During all of this, it's all around how do we bring up and reward the modeler. The detraction or the talk of knocking them down to a certain metal class or certain place, or we never talked about flaws or anything towards a negative approach towards evaluating a person's work. It's all around, what did they execute well? And as TJ said, it's really important to hammer home, like, what you give at SMC, especially the golds, like, that represents not only that person's work, but the show. And you carry and I will say it's a burden, because you are given the responsibility to evaluate the world's best work and assign a value to it, in a sense. And maybe value is not the right word, but assign an award to it or a recognition to it. And that carries. The internet lasts forever. The internet reaches everyone. And as people look at the show and look what was at the show and how it was recognized, like, all those things are very important. And you take the job very seriously. This is not asking Joe Schmo who just came across the country, hey, instead of going to Applebee's tonight, do you want to come judge? Like, that shit don't happen. This is a very well curated and executed process that is honestly years in the making. And they've built a cadre of judges based on their contributions to the hobby, their recognition, their ability to execute in the hobby. And it creates a very diverse group of individuals that bring a very serious nature to the task at hand, and have delivered in some way, shape, or form at that level as well. Maybe I feel a little bit of imposter syndrome there, but I'm very grateful. It's an honor yeah, I'm just happy to be part of it. And you know, when you go into a category, and you know, again, the internet, you see these things posted online, and you get the opportunity to look at. I'll use an example: Alex Clark's scratch printed interior Stug 3. Like, if you get the opportunity to spend 5 minutes uninterrupted with that piece, you gain an appreciation that you will never find in photographs online. And that can be said with everything we judged. And that's the privilege of judging as well, is that you are exposed to those pieces at the minutia level, and you get to see the nuances of what they wanted to recreate and scale. And that can't be found anywhere else. Because as TJ mentioned, if you go in during the public hours, you are 3 to 4 people deep along it's honestly like if you went to see the crown jewels, they need a people mover, because there are group like you just people want to see the work, and it's just hard to get in front of it. I was very fortunate, as TJ mentioned, we judged and we ended a little early. And during that time we ended a little early, I went around and took as many photographs as I could. And then fortunately, Martin and Bart allowed me to come in a little earlier on Sunday and take more pictures. That's how I was able to get almost 900, because once the public goes in there, you're done. You can see stuff, but you'll have to wait your turn. And it's just hard to see everything at that rate. So you have to be pretty deliberate about going into the exhibition hall. But bottom line is, it's a true honor. It's something that I looked forward to this year, certainly more than last year, but it's again, the pressure doesn't diminish. You still have an obligation to not only the modeler and respecting their work, but also the show. Again, Robert, Margot, Martin, Bart, and the entire team put trust in you as a jury member to, you know, bring their vision to the essentially the evaluation table and recognition on Sunday.
Yeah, it's I think we've probably mentioned it before, but Robert and Margot and the rest of the team, they are fiercely protective of what they've built at SMC, and rightfully so. They, you know, okay, it sounds a little ass kissy, but they've made the best show on the planet, in my opinion. In one man's opinion, it's the best modeling show in the world, and they have every right to be very protective of that. You know, to put the trust in me and JB and these other people. I'm sure a lot of these other guys and girls probably feel the same way. You know, it's a burden, one that I happily took, and one that I enjoyed thoroughly. But yeah, to act like it's just like walking in and judging a local show, like it's not. It's, you know, the weight of what he said and the two head judges said did rest heavily on my shoulders when I was judging. You know, as corny as that sounds, and it is kind of cheesy to say, but you know, you're judging the best of the best, so you have to bring your A game and respect the contest, to respect the modeler, and do the best job that you can. And I thought it was great. I loved every second of it. Other than it was really hot. For whatever reason, it was just hot in the room that night. When I set my stuff there Saturday morning, I'm like, man, it feels good in here. Because the Europeans aren't big on air conditioning, and as a kind of fat American guy, like I love air conditioning. So yeah, I was surprised it was so warm because there was no one in the room.
Well, I appreciate those comments, you guys. I think that's a really good insight for people that are maybe considering going and haven't gone before, as to what they can expect, you know, how their work's going to be evaluated, and what the jury members are evaluating as a part of that. I think that's really insightful. So thank you for that. I wanted to kind of kick it back over. We'll start with Jeff. It seemed like to me, looking from afar, you know, I was at MMSI, but it seems like the vendors and traders are at a little bit different level than a lot of the shows that I've been to here in the US. Maybe Jeff, can you maybe kind of talk about some vendors that you liked and what you thought of the traders that were at the show?
Yeah, I think, well, like so much about this show, overwhelming is the word that comes to mind, right? From the contest floor, but to the vendor hall, right? And just for the listeners to understand, it's a pretty large hall, and they've got it kind of divided into sort of more figure oriented vendors, and then there's a side that's more sort of ordnance focused vendors, which was actually kind of cool, right? Because it helped you orient like where you wanted to go, right? And I kind of spent my time flip-flopping between the two, but yeah, it was I would say I haven't traveled. Obviously, this is my first European show. I have not been to an IPMS nationals, but I've been to other nationals within the US, and this to me was like the most vendors I've ever seen assembled in one particular place. And the other thing that stood out to me, and it might have been because I wasn't looking for it, but it wasn't like you typically see in the US where you've got a lot of like half the vendors are maybe some cool stuff. Half the vendors are like feels like some guy just pulled his kits out of his basement and showed up to sell them at the shop. There was like maybe one or two of those kinds of vendors, but most of these folks, this was like the top of the top vendors that like you really, you you sort of look online and you're like, oh God, I need to get that, or it's really hard to get because you got to order from this particular place. So that was the other cool thing is there were vendors there like TJ already mentioned, HD models who specialize in really cool, unique Sherman parts. They're based out of Italy. I've never purchased their stuff before because it's a little hard. I think there's only one retailer in the U.S. that sells it. So I spent probably half of my money at HD models, like many others in our group. Couple of other models. There was Passion models from Japan, had a relatively small little area, but they were their stuff is so cool and so unique. I know Jackson and I dropped a lot of stuff there, and they were so cool. That was the other thing about the vendors. It's like everything else about this show. Everyone is so open and gracious, and when you bought stuff from the Passion Model folks, you'd get this little baggie with like a Japanese cookie in it and some stickers, and they bowed to you, and it just felt like it didn't feel like just a transaction. It felt like you were kind of creating a bond with the vendors, which sounds really corny, but and honestly, again, all the vendors were like that. So I think the other standout for me, I've been looking at a company online called Arto. They do figures and figureheads from somewhere in Asia. I can't remember exactly where, but they're I spent a lot there and got some resin heads, both U.S., British, Commonwealth, and just some bear heads for some of my figures. But yeah, those are some of the highlights. I would just say, in summary, for me, again, it was just it felt different. Like the vendors felt different. And at the end of the show, they were really like really eager to get rid of stuff, and you didn't have to say, hey, can I get that cheaper because it's the end of the show. They were literally saying, hey, how much you got? Like, I was trying to get rid of my euros, and this one vendor literally, he's like, how much you got? I'm like, well, I've got 6 euros left. He's like, well, this is 10 euro. He's like, it's your lucky day, just take it. Everybody was super cool. So
nice. Jackson, what was your kind of perspective of the traders?
I mean, like Jeff said, I mean, it's awesome. You get so many big names there that you just don't really get at US shows. You mentioned HD models and Passion. Those are two highlights for sure. But you also have like really big names, like you have Ammo, you have AK, MBK, Panzer Art, like really heavy hitters that are there vending in person. Like Jeff said, you do have a few vendors that are more kind of like mom and pop-up hobby shops where they just bring their stash and stuff, so you can get good deals on kits. One of the things that I think is probably the best thing to buy there is just aftermarket. In the US, I feel like vendors are very kit oriented. You don't really get a lot of aftermarket vendors here, but over there, I mean, that's where you get your photo etch, your 3D printed parts. It's got a lot more of an emphasis on that sort of thing. One of my other favorites was Dynamo models. They're relatively small. I think they're new-ish in terms of being a company. Traditionally, they've done figures, but they recently just started their foray into kits. So they re-released Dragon's 50 cal quad mount recently and added a bunch of 3D printed parts that are gorgeous. I actually wanted to buy that last year because I think it came out around the same time as SMC, but they didn't actually have any. So I was able to pick one up this year from them. And then they also just released their first in-house made kit. They did a Hotchkiss 25mm anti-tank gun. That was kind of like a last minute purchase, but they had a nice little display of it built up. And I was like, I kind of need that. So I bought that. That and the quad mount were the only two kits I bought. Everything else was aftermarket. One of the other things I wanted to highlight was there's a guy who does 3D printing. He goes by Andrew 3D Model Space on Facebook, mostly does commissions. Him and I have been talking a lot on Facebook. It was nice to finally meet him. He wasn't actually vending anything apart from he did a 3D printed kit of one of the Ukrainian like drone. I don't want to say jet skis because it's a bit bigger than that, but he had designed that and was selling those there. And he actually had two that were in the contest that have a really great story behind it. I know Mikkel like loved seeing that, wanted to buy one as well. But yeah, he's a great guy, really talented, and it was awesome seeing his 3D prints in person. And he actually gave me a little care package of some Titanic stuff to do a little review about. But yeah, I spent a very large fortune at HC Models. That took up the majority of my suitcase. I had it was funny because I put it on a credit card, and it was the first time I'd used that credit card overseas. And so of course I was the guy who came over and dropped hundreds of dollars worth of HD model stuff on the table and was like, I want all of this. And then I go to pay and my credit card got declined because I hadn't put in the overseas like notification on it yet. So I'm like, I promise I have money. I'll pay for it. I'm not going to be that guy that took everything off the shelf and now, it's your problem. So it was super awesome getting to buy more of that stuff because like Jeff said, it's not super available over here. Passion Models was great. They just released a little decal set that comes with a lot of like decals for US equipment. So you have like the little US logo that you'd see on bags and stuff. So I bought a couple sets of that. And then I didn't even realize until the last day. I don't know if it was Master Club proper or if it was a vendor selling Master Club stuff, but there was one kind of hidden away in the figure section, if you want to call it that, of the vendor hall. And they were selling all the Master Club tracks. And they actually had
that was the owner of Master Club.
Okay. So yeah, I didn't even know they were there. They were kind of hidden in the corner, and TJ pointed them out to me, but they were selling Sherman casting marks. I haven't seen them posted online anywhere. I tried looking up online to see if I could get any for Zach after the show, and I haven't seen them posted anywhere, but they're gorgeous. So I got those. Those are some highlights. The one advice I would give anyone is make sure you have cash. There is not an ATM at the hotel. The nearest one is in a small, like the actual town outside of the hotel. A lot of the vendors only accept cash, and I know that's an issue that a lot of us ran into where, we didn't have any. TJ had to spot me some money, and yeah, just make sure you have euros on you because not everywhere accepts card. But yeah, vendors overall were just awesome. I mean, it was the same as last year.
Jensen, you've been to, Scale Model World, which is kind of known for its traders as well. But what do you think of the traders at SMC?
I really like SMC traders because it's very diverse types of things you can buy. Depending what you're after, there's going to be someone for you. Very, very apples and oranges. Like Telford, every sort of trader, a lot of selling kits, a lot of kit sellers. SMC, there are good few stands that sell kit, like Edward, they're selling all their kits, all their aftermarket. There's a lot of stands there selling just boxes and mountains of kits. But I made it very clear beforehand in my defense to my mother. I said, I'm not buying any kits because my house there's like 3 rooms filled with kits. So I was like, I'm not going to bring any kits back, don't worry. I went to SMC specifically for aftermarket, the things you can't find very easily online in your country, the stuff you didn't even know existed. Like, that's the stuff I'm going for. So mainly my purchases, JB's to blame, the VG Dio model stuff. I, hands up, never heard of them before SMC. I wasn't aware. I saw JB walking towards me in one direction. He was like, oh, VG Dio are over there. Look at this. I was like, oh, that's quite cool. I'll check them out. So I went over and I was like, oh, wow, this stuff's really good. Like, there's a lot of companies out there now that release resin, like facades or buildings. I was like, no, these are next level crisp. I've not seen anything like them.
So for those listening in, what that looked like was JB told Jensen about the stand. Jensen went over there, looked at everything and said, I'm having this. This is mine now.
Yeah. At first I was like, I'll have that one. And then I was just like, oh, that one's quite cool. I can see me doing something with it. I was like, I'll have that one as well. Oh, I'll have the one next to it. And then I was like, okay, that's enough for now. I'll go for a walk. Came back 3 hours later. I was like, okay, that one I don't have. I'll have that one as well, and I'll have this little well. And then the next day I went back with JB and Jackson. We talked Jackson to get in the last one that was available at the stand because he was like, there's only one left. It's like, well, now you have to. So yeah, VG Dio model, that stuff's just incredible out of Spain. Hopefully, I think Angel's going to become a stockist in the US of them. That would be really good for you guys because that's really good stuff. So there was that stuff. I've got plans for all of the ones I bought. Again, Jackson's to blame for all the HD model stuff I bought because I was just like, okay, I want to build the M4A176 that we saw at the Bastogne Museum. What do I need? He's like, okay, let me give you a list. You need this. You might want this. You need this. You don't need this, but it would be nice. I was like, I'll just have all of them. It's fine. Got the hull. The hull was like brand new. I'm pretty sure it's like a brand new release. Got that stuff. Got some nice laser cut vegetation stuff. I mentioned I have listed all this stuff in the main episode, but yeah, I like that stuff to make vignettes and dioramas look a little bit more interesting with life and stuff. So some of that stuff, I just realized I said stuff like 60 times in the past like minute. Nice t-shirt, really nice orange t-shirt with a rhino on it. I also got some of those casting marks because we were at Master Club stand and only took cash Saturday. I was like, oh, I'm 5 short, and then luckily TJ was like, right, there's 5, get them. So I got one of each, the numbers and like the casting for different manufacturers or whatever it is for parts of the tank. I'm not a Sherman guy. These two are. They're probably like, you have no idea what you're on about. Yeah, and that's it. Got some Panzerwerk resin tracks for said Sherman I'm going to build. And yeah, that's it. But again, no kits. All very much specific things that would make my builds better, hopefully. So yeah, the traders are great. Like, whatever you're after, there's something there. Massive selection of fantasy figures. Like, you could put all of them in one massive room. Because obviously 3D printing is becoming so there's a word I'm looking for, I can't say it.
Prevalent.
That's the one. I said privileged. I was like, 3D printing is becoming very privileged now. No, it's becoming so prevalent now that these brands obviously can produce them really not cheap, but affordable and quickly. That there's just so many, and there's so many choices. And when it comes to fantasy, there's literally limitless. So it's cool going around and seeing all these different things you could buy. So if you're a figure painter, a fantasy painter, wow, the selection is ridiculous.
TJ, what'd you get?
Yeah, a bunch of HD model stuff. Not as much as Jackson. Jackson spent a lot of money on their stand. And although one of the things he bought was for me, which I still got to get from him, their new large hatch A1 hull that Fabio Sacchi mastered. He picked one of those up for me. But the main thing, like, I didn't really get that much. I got a couple of figures. I got another astronaut bus. I think I talked about it on the main episode too. I got an astronaut bus, a post-apocalyptic dude, and then I bought a ship. I bought a steam drifter. Jackson and I saw this vendor last year. It's called Neo Mega Resin. They're from the UK, and we both are like, that's pretty cool. They do 1/44 scale ships. So like in scale or in gauge, whatever you want to call it. So it's compatible with that kind of stuff. So figures and buildings and stuff. It's pretty cool. And I saw this little thing. I think it's new. I'm like, I gotta have that. I really do. Like I hemmed and hawed about it. And then it was Sunday, shortly before the vendor hall closed. I had 90 euros left in cash. I'm like, I gotta spend this crap. I don't want to take it home with me. And I walked over and I was like, all right, I'll take it because it was 95 euros. I thought I had 95 euros. I did not. Now I remember that other €5 went to Jensen. And I was like, I'll take this. And I was like, I got cash. And I pulled out 90. And I'm like, oh, damn it. I'm €5 short. I'll do card if that's okay. He's like, nope, I'll take 90. Just take it. So I'm like, sweet. So I bought that. It's pretty neat. It's actually Chloe Plattner built one. Hers is like shipwrecked on a beach. It was there at the show. And mine probably won't be that good, but I'm like, yeah, I really want to build. I don't know, something about this like early 20th century World War I time period. I think this ship class came out in 1917, and they were used as both fishing ships and they were like coastal defense ships. They put like a 2-pounder pom-pom on the front, so you can build that out of the kit too. I'll probably do mine as a civilian fishing ship because you're a little more free with the colors. Because if it was in Royal Navy service, I think it was just gray. But yeah, that was kind of like my big thing. I'm like, yeah, this is pretty cool. I don't know who I am anymore. I'm buying freaking shit models and yeah.
Yeah. When I saw your picture of your stash that was in there, I was like, wow. Wonder
Yeah.
what's going on there.
I have a soft spot for ships. I built a submarine, never like built a full on ship. I just have a soft spot for ships in general because I think I mentioned before, there is nothing sexier than a World War II battleship. They are the coolest looking things. They're the coolest, piece of war machinery ever made. And this is American battleships, Royal Navy battleships, Japanese battleships, German battleships, the Italian battleships, all of them. Just a full-on battleship is just the coolest looking thing on the planet. Just bristling with guns everywhere. God, I love them so much. I'll probably never build an actual battleship, but yeah, they're one of my favorite things ever.
Nice. JB, bring us home. What'd you get at the traders? What was your impression?
Yeah, I mean, I talked about this a little bit in the regular episode, but echoing everybody, I think I spent money at all those stands. Alternity Miniatures, now they're under scientificmodels.shop. Great stuff, cool post-apocalyptic, really enjoyed that. VG Dio models, of course. And then as Jeff mentioned, the Arto folks out of South Korea. And it's interesting, all those vendors, they're pro. One of the other shops I'll mention is Gotha Works. So they had this giant silver cube in the traders hall, and it was the greatest marketing because you're like, what the hell is in that? Is the Stargate in there? Is what's going on in here? And it was just really cool, very professional. And again, the professionalism of all these vendors. I love Arto. I just love buying shit from them because when you go up to them, you buy some figures and the gentleman pulls out the black little box and folds it up and brings out the glue stick and puts the professional looking logo on the box for you and then like puts the little flap on it. So the way to open it, you only can open it. You'll have to cut it. It's just the professionalism is really high and their stickers are cool too. I think it's all those little swag things make the difference too. So bottom line, echoing everybody else, it was just awesome. Spent a lot of money. Jackson still owes me money. He spent all of his cash at HD and has to pay for rent. So next paycheck, I have mine collection agency, JB Collections. We'll be taking a little lean on something for him. But no, overall, like Jackson said, just be sure you have cash. And don't leave your wallet in Ireland. That's another important factor.
That's always solid advice. All right. I want to ask kind of one last question. I've never been, obviously, but each one of you have been to SMC at least once now. So what would you say if one of your buddies was saying, should I go to SMC? I'm thinking of going. So what would you say? Jackson, let's start with you.
Definitely don't make a weekend trip out of it. Give yourself some time. Definitely make an effort to actually go into the contest hall despite the crowds. There's amazing pieces in there, and no matter how much time you spend in there, you'll always wish you spent more. Like I said, bring cash. Definitely don't do what I did and stay up super late before the trip to where you're tired the entire duration of it. I know there was plenty of nights where everyone went to the Abbey Bar at the hotel after, the day of trading and the contest was over. And I did not go because I was exhausted and needed to go back to the room to sleep. Definitely make sure that, yeah, you're well rested and ready to stay up late and socialize because it's a great part of the show and it's something that I definitely missed out on this year compared to last. But yeah, just yeah, no matter what you're expecting with that show, it's gonna be better than you can imagine. And no matter how much we talk about it or post photos online, like it doesn't really capture the scope of just how awesome it is. I know Jeff will probably talk more about that since it was his first time, but it's just a world-class show. It's the best of the best. It's the Olympics of scale modeling, and I loved it last year. I loved it this year. I'm looking forward to it next year. I'm excited to see how much more I can progress in my own personal modeling skills and see where I rank next year. Yeah, I'm just looking forward to it again.
All right, Jeff. Well, you got introed. So what would you say?
Yeah, well, I mean, first I'd say go, right? Like, don't hesitate. Figure out a way to get there. And I'd say, especially for the U.S. listeners who might be used to the way things work over here, is set aside any preconceived notions about what a show can be, and go into it with complete sort of open mind, and be ready to meet people and engage with people on a level that you might not be used to. Because one thing I would say that really stood out for me is, no matter who I met, no matter what country where they were from, no matter what the introduction was or how I met them, almost 100% of my interactions resulted in having a pretty deep conversation with folks about the craft, about the art, about what we do, about the show. Every interaction was just super memorable. And so you kind of have to, and I'm sort of an introvert by nature, so you kind of have to come into it knowing that you're going to meet some amazing people here. And they might be world-class modelers, and you got to sort of be in a headspace to be able to handle that. And then you're just going to meet people like yourself who just are, modelers, looking to explore. And no matter what you're doing, you're going to be interacting with people that are just awesome human beings who want to have a kind of a deeper connection, centering around this great hobby. And so I think just coming into it with that open mind, to Jackson's point, making sure your social battery is fully charged, because you're gonna need it, because it is constant. And everybody there is just so gracious and warm that it requires that. So, yeah.
Jensen?
To quote Nike, just do it. Yeah, it's just go. Like, it's a trip, and it's something that JB made a point about on Facebook. It doesn't even have to be an expensive one. It's granted, obviously, only speaking from like the British side of it here. Like, it's an hour flight from Manchester. I mean, England's not that big, Britain's not that big, so the flight's not going to vary that much. You can get there for like 70 quid on a flight. You can fly directly into Eindhoven, get an Uber that's 15-20 minutes to the venue from the airport, be there for 2 days, and experience one of the greatest model shows and modeling environments on the planet. You will hug strangers, and at the end of the week, they'll be your best friends. It's ridiculous. You'll see a standard of modeling that you probably didn't know existed. You'll meet people that you've only seen on the internet, and they'll become long-term friends. You'll eat well, you'll drink well, and you'll leave a 3-day experience, and you'll remember it forever. So if that doesn't sell it to you, I don't know what will.
TJ?
Yeah, I mean, along the same lines as everyone else. If someone comes up to me and says, should I go? The answer is yes. And I know I told Jeff while we were there towards the end, I was like, I hope I did not oversell this to you, because I spoke glowingly of it when I got back last year at almost every freaking meeting we've had for our AMPS chapter, just how amazing this show is. And not just because the work there is good and the vendors there are good, but again, just like Jeff said, make sure your social battery is charged. You will deplete it, but you're going to love every second of it. And as an introvert myself that typically does not like crowds of people that I don't know, you don't get that feeling there. You really don't. These people, not only are they the best modelers in the world, but they are gracious with their time. And just be prepared to experience that, to be welcomed into the club, essentially, that is SMC, because everyone there, it's one of it's the only show where the quality of people matches the quality of work on the table, and the quality of the work on the table is higher than it is anywhere else. So that should tell you, I think, everything you need to know. If you're considering it, just do it. If you can only make it a weekend trip, it's worth it. That's what I did last year. We flew in Friday, we left Monday. It was freaking worth it. I'd do it again. Obviously, more time's great, but yeah, if that's all you got, do it for sure, and experience what it is that they've built there.
Bring us home, JB.
Yeah, I think it's just echoing what everybody said. Just do it in the simplest of terms. But as you think about everything, it's highlighting what these folks have said here, is that make sure your social battery's charged, because you will be. And I loved what Jeff said. Just be prepared to talk to people. Go out of your comfort zone, because we're all scale modelers. We all have the same attitude. But once you break that little layer of ice, I mean, you're falling into the deep end, and you can go from not knowing someone to talking about the extreme minutia of a scale modeling technique, art. It's something that's unrivaled. I think for me, going, as we all said, it can be expensive. Biggest thing for Americans is the plane flight. Tell you what, everybody, maybe sell a few kits, maybe don't buy a few kits, and you've easily paid for your flight, because everything else is cheaper than a show here. But that said, I really loved seeing Posse members there when we had our meetup on Sunday. That was amazing. And then I think what nails it in terms of selling it to people, you don't even have to sell it. I don't even know why I say that. When I look at people like El Presidente Tim, Rob Booth, and John Bryan, individuals that this isn't their thing. This type of show they've never been to before. They didn't know what to expect, and kind of what TJ said around overselling it to Jeff. These individuals went, and I asked all of them at the end, and man, they smiled the whole time. They talked the whole time. It was just freaking amazing. So I'm confident, and I think TJ probably feels the same way. We all do, in the sense of we're not overselling it. Like, this is the show to go to. If you got to pick one, you got to go to this. Save your shekels and go to Eindhoven, because what Robert, Margot, Martin, Bart, and the entire SMC team deliver is unrivaled. And we're very grateful for their dedication. Hell, I bet they're already planning for 2025. And guess what? As soon as the show ended, they already put out at the show, they're already advertising 2025. So they're beyond proactive on this event and getting people to come back. And they were very encouraging to us to bring more outsiders. And maybe outsiders is the wrong word, but people that haven't been exposed to this, bring more people to expose them, bring more Americans, bring more, aircraft modelers, armor modelers, bring everybody. Everybody is welcome, and they want everyone. You will not find a person that won't shake your hand or give you a hug at the end of the day. That's the type of people that go to SMC.
TJ, maybe if you can give us some metrics or some facts about the contest, anything like that.
Okay. We kind of talked about it before. So it was at least 2,800 entries, and that's of course spread across ordnance and figure. It is 2/3 roughly figure. This year apparently more aircraft were entered than ever. I think they had to pull an extra aircraft modeling team together at kind of like the last minute to make sure they had enough coverage. So I don't have an exact number of entries. I should get that. I think they give that out, but they have released the award list. So I kind of pulled together the award list and the categories that affected us here on the call. And I don't have the total number in the category. I think they used to add that to the results, but they did not do it this year. So I'll start with aircraft 48 scale masters. There was 27 awards or medals. I'm sorry, 27 awards. 24 of them were medals. So there was 3 highly commended. And the breakdown was let's see, 7 bronzes, 5 silvers, and then 12 golds, because apparently they're just giving golds away to everyone in aircraft. I feel there was a lot. I don't know. There was a lot. I know that. I'm sure Jensen can respond to that. There was a shitload of aircraft on those tables.
Yeah, there was. There's even a statement made during the awards ceremony just how many aircraft, like, in comparison to other years, it was a lot. Don't know the exact number again, but it was a lot. Like, it was a noticeable increase.
Because I remember last year, like, there's not a lot of aircraft here, but like there's pretty lightly attended class. And going back and looking at the history of the awards, it seems to be that way for a number of years. But for whatever reason, people just felt like bringing their airplanes. And then for military vehicle masters, which was most of us except for Jeff, he didn't have anything in that category. They awarded 27 entries, and of those 27, 11 of them were commended, 6 bronze, 6 silver, and 4 golds. So that category was pretty tough. I feel like more fairly tough this year than maybe last year because of some of the shenanigans. But what did you guys think about that category to my fellow compatriots that also placed in it or entered into it?
I was going to say I didn't place.
You're on the list. You're on the
no,
list.
no, Master's Armor is the best of the best, and
Mhm.
I'm thankful to walk away with anything. When you have people Bernard Lustig, Mauro Eanes, and Lester judging your work, there's no, I mean, there's few people that rank in that category, and I think for me, I was happy with Highly Commended, and I appreciate the time Lester took following the show to give me some critical feedback, and I fully intend on implementing it on my piece. But yeah, it's a tough category. This is not, again, we've said it before, we'll say it again. This is not participation trophies. This is as far from that as possible. And to think open judging is anything close to that, you're just ignorant. And I know that's a strong statement, but I truly feel that way. Where everything, even the pins for Highly Commended, are earned at SMC. It's that level of work, and by them having beginner, standard, master. And I think, you had mentioned TJ before, they're going to have an intermediate category even between standard and master. Like that's where they truly value the different skill sets and rewarding them at the level in which people are, delivering work at. So, bottom line is it's a tough, but fair, evaluation criteria and standard amongst all classes.
What'd you think, Jackson?
Yeah, so my entries did not place, but one of the things I wanted to highlight that JB mentioned was just that there's no, I guess, weirdness about asking the judges for feedback and even non-judges. I mean, just people in those categories that did place, because you have the Abbey Bar kind of post show every day. There's always opportunities to talk to people, and I stood outside with Lester and Tracy Hancock talking about my models for probably about an hour. And, especially the judges, they have no issue giving you really, really good feedback on how you can improve. I didn't walk away feeling discouraged or anything. I walked away seeing where the bar was, seeing how close I was, and I guess having a better understanding of what I can do in the next year to really up my craft. It's not like especially the IPMS Nationals where you don't place and you don't really hear anything about it. You don't know if you were close. You don't know if your modeling's up to par. I mean, like you go to that show, you have an understanding of what the skill level's at and where you need to go to get to that point. And nobody's weird about talking about it. Everyone's willing to discuss and help you grow and just give you genuine feedback.
Do you have anything to say, Jensen?
Nah. No, genuinely, not really. Like, I was highly commended for one of my aircraft. I'm not gonna go on my tirade of what that means to me. No, but everything I entered and what it got afterwards, thinking about it and seeing other things on the table, I know it's very well noted that this sort of competition isn't you versus someone else or whatever. But I looked at the other models that did place or did get highly commended, awarded, and so on. I looked at them and I did compare it to mine, but in a way where I was just like, okay, for example, this piece got that. What's mine missing? Where's that line between, okay, mine got nothing. What's different from what I've put on the table to that one that's got highly commended, then the one that awarded, and so on. So it was really good in seeing, okay, I after a couple of hours of really seeing everything, I genuinely did learn. I was like, I get it now. I see where I'm lacking. And every single build I put down, I think I said this to Jeff, I could list everything on every build I put down where there was an issue or a reason it didn't do better than it did. I don't know if that's what we're talking about right now, but that's what I'm talking about. But yeah, that's kind of where I was at. I was like, obviously, when you put something on the table and in your head you might think, oh, I think this could actually do well, and then you get nothing. It's a little bit like, oh, that's a bit shit. But then after a bit of more mental clarity and digesting it all, it's like, you know what, perfectly justified, makes complete sense. Like, yeah, fair enough. All I have to do is next year build more models, build them better. Like, it is as simple as that. Just do better.
And I think being inspired is why, one of the best reasons to go to a show, right? To meet people, to get new ideas, but also to get different perspectives. Jensen, I love the barn project because you went outside the box. You did a lot of things you hadn't done before. And a lot of the details that you added, I wouldn't have even thought about. I thought it was really great and everything. But then you go to the show and you get additional ideas and a different perspectives. Like, I built this amazing barn and I used magnets to put it together, and I had all this electrical conduit, and the tobacco ad was great. But then you're like, oh, but after seeing other dioramas on the table, it's too dark. I need to work on my lighting. And that's kind of exciting, I think, to get those kinds of perspectives in person.
Yeah. Well, one thing I do want to note, that barn, having put it on the table and how the lighting works, one thing to know, it's a very well lit exhibition room. The lighting is the best I've seen in any show. My build, it's like deliberately blocked out all the light. It's like, okay, no wonder no one could see it. It was dark as fuck. So fair enough. But one thing I do want to note is I put aircraft on the table. Not many people know me as someone who builds aircraft. And the amount of people that came up to me were like, hang on, those 109s were yours. I was like, yeah, I built them like 4 years ago. And I'll fully admit that it was very nice to hear people being surprised at how decent I am at building aircraft. Because, and I say decent, I don't want to say good, because I didn't win, Master's Gold. But
I'm also surprised about how good any of your models are.
Most
shocked every time I look at them.
But yeah, John Bryan, even he was just like, hang on, these are yours. I was like, shit, to receive really good compliments on my aircraft from John Bryan, that's saying something. And Tim, the aircraft guy, we were talking about it for ages, he's like, these are actually really good. I'm like, I love how amazed everyone is. I'm actually not bad at this.
It sounds like from everything you guys have said, it was an amazing trip. And like John said, there's a plane ticket involved for us Americans or whatever. But I mean, I think it's great to be exposed to, different culture, not necessarily international culture, but different modeling culture, different communities develop in different ways and everything. But it just sounds like it's amazing. And I'm really looking forward to going.
And there's sort of one more category we have to talk about, and that's for our our own AMPS master, Jeff. So he entered in the storytelling diorama vignettes, and I might have accidentally on purpose not told him that is the category when it comes to ordnance. I feel like military vehicle is one of the more difficult ones, but I think the most difficult ordnance category is dioramas and vignettes. Now that this year they were combined, so I might have not said that to him on purpose. That is where the good ones really go. There's a lot of good armor modelers that just build vehicles for sure, but you look at the names of the diorama winners, those are the ones that really stand out, because to me, I think a lot of people that's the next, once you get really good at building military vehicles, you move into building vignettes and dioramas for them. So that category was freaking huge. I don't know how many entrants there were, but it was most of the one table, where the military vehicles were down at the end, and then up 2/3 of the way, all the way up, the rest of the table. And this is a 80-foot long table, was dioramas and vignettes. It was nuts. They were packed in there to the point where someone commented on one of the pictures JB took. They're like, wait, that I don't understand. Why is there a German tank in front of an American barn that says chew tobacco? I'm like, oh no, that's Jensen's, and it's just next to this other one, but they're so close because there's so little room. They had to be almost stacked on top of each other. So that being said, I don't know how many entries were in that category, but I think it was the largest of the ordnance ones, because there was 58 awards handed out for that category out of everything, which is a lot. But that being said, 26 of them were commended. So as far as medals go, there was only I'm not good at math, so I'm just gonna have to calculate 32. So there's 32 medals. Most of them were bronze. That was another category where there's only 4 golds, and then there was 6 silvers, and then all the rest were bronze. And our very own Jeff got a bronze in that category. Next to some real heavyweights too. So why don't you talk a little bit about that, Jeff?
Yeah, thanks, TJ. Yeah, I mean, first of all, I'll never forget the moment, like that first day we got there, and I set my diorama down on the table, and it was next to some work where I was just like, oh my God, this is crazy. And that was before it was totally filled up. And then when I went back in and saw it next to Kev Smith's work and some of the other Four Corners guys, and then just all of these other world renowned modelers, I was just like blown away. For me, that was enough. I was happy at that. I was a happy boy at that point, just to be displayed next to that. And then being able to sort of be awarded a bronze was just icing on the cake, and to get up there on stage with a Kev Smith who won bronze. I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like I look up to his stuff, and here I am, right? Like, I mean, he also won gold in ordnance, so I'm not saying that he and I are at the same level by any means, but yeah, it was truly a special moment for me. But like everybody else has said, it's also driving me to challenge myself more, because I was able to see the caliber of work in that category, the storytelling. Again, I mean, we use that word a lot in the hobby, but truly, like the masters, the gold medal masters, like the Dan Sankeys in that category, they are just the story that they're telling within their piece, the art. Again, another word people either love or hate. It is truly art. It is truly art. Whether you like that or not, it is truly art. And it's just pushing me, and that's one of the reasons I'm so excited about going again next year, because I want to just push myself, challenge myself. And again, I'd still say though, like just going and being on the table, medaling or not, that is the special part about this.
And then we also have to talk about our newly minted master modeler, Scott Gentry, winning gold with his tractor. That and I told Scott this. It got put into the wrong category, so it got moved. Me and Jose Brito and Chloe Plattner were already looking at the category. Ivan brought it over and said, hey, this needs to get moved to this category. He sets it down. Jose Brito looks at it and then straight up says, that's the best piece in this category. I was like, yeah, you think so? He's like, yep, that is the best one. Absolutely the best one. I was like, man, I don't know. I think it kind of sucks. But I was like, if you say so, you're a better modeler than me. So if you say it's the best one, it's the best one. And it was awarded a gold in civilian vehicle standard, which means Scott Howe has to move up. He's a newly minted international master modeler, Scott Gentry.
Well, TJ was pretty kind to call me and let me know. I was in the airport and I was like truly shocked. But anyway, thank you, TJ, for that. It's a little embarrassing and humbling. But the fact that Jose and your team liked it is really great. And the reason it went was to as a gift for Spud. He's done an awful lot for me, and I wanted to try and do something for him. So that was really great. But anyway, I'm not sure I belong, but it's pretty humbling. So
no, man, you just need to own it.
Big hog at the trough now, Scott Gentry.
Yeah, that's right.
Friggin' can't roll with the big dog, stay on the porch. I think all of us are sitting there waiting for him to come by and grab us. So, but Scott will be Masters next year. Can't wait. It'll be great.
Yeah, because that's not intimidating at all.
No, it's fine. It was an honor to judge it, even though I didn't even really do most of the judging. I mean, Jose was like, "That this is it." I was like, "Yeah, okay, I would agree with that." I was like, "I would agree. This is the best piece in this category."
What's interesting is you and Brian Krieger are very similar in a sense that you have to leave your country to get awarded. You have to go to abroad. You have to go abroad to get something.
Yeah,
can't win locally, but man,
that's right. That's
SMC, right. This guy.
That tractor is interesting. Just John actually gave me that. We do a little gift exchange, and John gave me that as a Christmas present, and it just spoke to me. I wasn't expecting it, but from the time I received it as a gift, it just spoke to me. And I was talking to John on a Zoom call while I was supposed to be modeling something else, and I just opened the box, and it just sort of went from there. It was an interesting process for sure.
Well, you took a risk and it paid off.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. That's good. 1 out of 100. Everybody gets lucky eventually.
Still counts
sooner or later.
Yeah,
Still
still
counts.
counts. They can't take it away from you, Scott.
I feel like we, I mean, we've been going for quite a while, but we haven't talked about walnut strips.
Oh
I
man,
feel like something's
Let me
missing.
tell you, I have a picture of that. It was an emotional moment. I've never seen someone get so excited. And the best part, we're walking through Bastogne, as TJ mentioned, and Jeff, like in the mist, passing a Sherman, and then TJ's up front. Jensen and I are walking, and I just start recording on my phone because somebody is in the back talking to Mickle about walnut strips in the middle of Bastogne. I'm like, what in the heck are these guys on about? And I said plural guys, but really it was one guy that just couldn't get. I mean, we're going back to Bastogne next year just solely so we can go to Kit Double so Jeff can buy some walnut strips. I mean, it was an emotional and touching experience that you probably finally, that's something for a paywall on the internet typically, but we were able to see it live. But yeah, that's Jeff, everyone. If you ever see him at a show, bring up walnut strips. The guy is infatuated with them, right, Jeff?
100%. 100%. I can't believe you got a picture of me actually fondling the walnut strip in the shop, though.
I heard you moaning an aisle away, and I'm like, what is this guy on about? Like, I've never seen. We all get emotional in hobby shops. Talk, oh, I want to buy this kit. I want to buy that. Oh, got to get this. And it's a jovial nature, but yours was an emotional connection to that.
It was.
To that. It was a bond between usually humans and their animals, like TJ's cat, my dog. Like there was a moment there where personal connection was made, and I walked over, and you were still going after several minutes. I'm like, I just got to get a picture of this, and then you called somebody else over, and I'm pretty sure the shop owner's like, oh wow, Americans, this is interesting. So probably the most excitement he's seen in since 44, I bet. So but no,
hopefully they let me in the shop next year. I don't know. Yeah, maybe to your point, maybe they won't. I mean,
there's a photograph of Jeff behind the counter right now.
Exactly.
If you see this man, but it's Jeff's rack now. You didn't buy any, which I was disappointed about, but I understand. There were strips. Yeah. Hard to handle. So, but no, it was good. Jokes aside, moments like that make these trips. And, Mickle's got some that we'll talk about in another time. But no, it's all good. And it's just been great. And I think we can end the episode probably on that, or this segment at least is this was a wonderful show. I don't know if anybody else has a few words on SMC, but, if you're considering, just do it.
Well, that was a terrific wrap up for SMC. We want to thank everybody that joined in. Obviously, JB, you were there, and then TJ and Jensen, and then also Jeff and Jackson joining you. I was really kind of impressed with the scope of the conversation because we sort of had the broad overview. Hey, we had fun, but then we really got into a lot of specifics, whether it was judging or the traders or, just so many things. We seem to really get into the specifics of why the SMC experience was so great for everybody.
Yeah, that's really the heart and soul of this episode. And I'm glad we could do it. And I think, it's nice to have such a diverse perspective on the show. Like we talked about, Jeff, this is his first time, very lucky that all of us, it was our second, but in different degrees as well. TJ judging for the first time, myself coming back in the second. We didn't even mention, but Jensen and TJ and I attended Eric Swinson's workshop. There is so much going on in the show. We didn't even mention that in this episode. So there's just so much going on, so much love for the hobby. Yeah, it's just a wonderful experience. If you have any questions, if you're interested in going, feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to help. whether it's logistics, the show itself, or tips and tricks. We're all there to support it. And just to kind of put, dot the I across the T, the Plastic Posse will be back in 2025. We do plan on extending the trip a little bit this time. I know, Scott, with you going, which is going to be amazing. We hope to even go to England beforehand. Maybe do a few days in London. We'll use that as a base of operations, but hit Bovington, hit Duxford, and then fly into either Amsterdam or Eindhoven for the show, likely on Thursday afternoon. So there's just so much to do, but this is great. And if you're, like I said, if you're interested, you can plan it. You can do it. It's not terribly expensive. I posted my final trip costs on the Facebook group. So biggest expense obviously is the airfare, but my total cost, except the vendors, food and drink, I'll comment, was around $1,500. And that includes everything. But that's splitting things with anywhere from 2 to 5 folks. So going with a group really helps. But bottom line is you could probably do this trip for easily under $2,000. So with that, I've spoken enough. Thank you so much for listening. Also want to thank our show sponsors, AK Interactive, Tamiya USA, Tankcraft, and Bases by Bill, and especially our Patreons. We'll skip the long list this time, but we definitely appreciate your contributions to this show at every level, whether it's $1 to $10 or even more. You are the ones that make this show possible, and we're extremely grateful for that. And we're extremely grateful to meet some of you in person at SMC and MMSI in Chicago. So with that, thank you so much for joining, and yeehaw!